Can you adjust me?
I don't know how to make you not sideways.
Let me try this. Okay, don't give me a minute here.
Okay, thanks. Many firsts, Mr. Schreck.
Yep.
never had someone appear sideways or either.
If anyone could be sideways, it's me. Let's hold on here. Now, is that better?
Yeah, perfect. So let me just share the link again. 1 sec. That's the old video. Where's my like videos in here?
Give me 1 minute to get everything together, and then we'll be ready.
Sure. Oh god.
Right.
Playlist. I don't want that. I want live video. My videos. Live.
Just give me 1 minute here.
Oh shit! Why don't I see this? It is live. Oh god, what's going on now? Am I live on YouTube or somewhere else? Oh Jesus. Okay, what is that doing? Hold on. I'll have to look on YouTube on here. YouTube. I mean, no matter what, so we'll have lost all our viewers, but it'll be there for posterity anyways when we record it.
Yeah, let me...
Live. Why is it not appearing there? Oh, Jesus, what have I done now? Okay, there's the old one. Oh, Nick Schreck Part 2. Oh, I see. Pardon me. It's there. Yeah, it just is using my stupid... Okay, sorry. I see it. Right. Share. And... Oh, this is a bit of a process. Hold on.
Yep.
I'll just share the link and say, look, we're back. Oh no, I'll just do it on Twitter and Telegram and good enough.
You mean you're going to put another announcement?
Yeah, I have to make a new link. That's the thing. Okay. The old one's gone. That's the sad part.
Well, in either case, this will be on permanently, even if people don't see it tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. 1 sec. We do this and then we're all set. So I had to make it live, even just to get that link, even though we're just talking nonsense right now. Copy Earl. And anyways, we sorted out in the end. So I wonder what that was crazy. YouTube, technical issues. There we go. Okay, we are back. Share it to a couple of friends who were watching, and they were all like leaving to go. They're like, "Oh, I can go back to my Valentine's date." That's another thing. I totally did not realize it was Valentine's Day. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that, and I will.
Well, we're live. You can mention whatever you want, but everything we're saying now is going to be part of it. I'm afraid.
All right. Just
like
thrill of live television.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I believe I introduced you. Oh, sharing a direct YouTube link on Twitter? Oh, Jesus Christ. So many problems. Hold on. I'll just say, okay, we're back. Share the link underneath it with Mr. Schreck. And I'll be sure to spell your name right since I did it wrong so many times.
You should be practiced how to spell it right now.
Oh, Jesus. How many times did I do it? View post. Oh, God. We're so close. Oh, God. Oh, come on. Show up. Oh. Send now. Oh, God. It's just like not showing up on my phone. Like it's, like the phone, the Twitter will not. Okay, we're back.
Yeah,
okay.
Obviously, we are cursed by technical problems tonight.
Oh, the god of technical, the god of techne. Who would that be? I guess Hephaestus or something. He's not with us. I guess we've made an affront on by not observing the holiday, the Venus holiday. We have.
I am observing it.
Well, so am I, but I mean, it's 9 o'clock here for me, so the wife is not happy. I was like, oh, I have to do this thing. And she was like, "Oh," she was not happy. I was in trouble because I forgot it was Valentine's. I mean, a week ago. Valentine's is not the type of holiday I would keep track of too.
Maybe Venus feels that we are blaspheming her.
I think so. But maybe we can make amends. We'll make it up to her.
All right.
With our amazing, amazing talk. So I like introduced you as well as I could. I don't know if you want me to do it again, but I just gave a quick summary and what I wanted to get out of you, just like sort of your history and stuff, and how you were willing to be the villain or the foil for all of. When I was a kid, I remember seeing you on some of those TV shows, and you were like the villain for all of America, because during the Satanic Panic, you were the guy who got up and said, "Yeah, I'm a devil worshiper."
Right.
And so you were willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you have to understand about that period is that Radio Werewolf was designed, as a very conceptual art piece to be the very essence of everything that the inventors of the Satanic Panic, of Christian evangelical thinkers, feared and hated. So, we deliberately pushed it to be the caricature of what they hated the most. So you have to see the Radio Werewolf period within that context.
Right.
And my sense of humor, I've said before, it's like the Bee Gees song that I started a joke that made the whole world crying. When I'm being serious, people think I'm joking. When I'm joking, people think I'm serious. So, and I've always played on the border of that misunderstanding deliberately. But it was, I think when people look back from younger generations at the Satanic Panic, they think it was all fun and games and transgressive trolling. I mean, that's something I've been accused of. People from this generation look back then and think that I was trolling, which is not something I was doing. Everything I said at that time was sincere. I know I may have exaggerated. I may have made it more melodramatic and theatrical, but people who knew me at that time can attest that was me, But the Radio Werewolf concept was to be the band that Christian evangelicals feared in the Reagan era. And we're right back in another Reagan era on steroids. QAnon and all the conspiracy theories that it has bred has brought us into a much more severe Satanic Panic. I would say one that has gone much more deep into every level of culture.
Well, that's very interesting. But but I think it's a totally different thing as well. The whole internet culture, which I was delighted you sent me those songs where you were commenting, singing about 4chan and red pill, black pill, and all that. Like it's like the Satanic Panic maybe, but it's a unique thing, and it is a culture to itself, and it's very strange. I'm not sure that QAnon is really still a force to be reckoned with, is it? I haven't really heard of anything much from them for.
Well, having been a target of it, yeah, I can attest that it is. And
were you?
Even if it has lost some of its steam, a lot of its ideas, if you want to call the idiocy that it promulgates an idea, has seeped into popular culture. And I encounter intelligent, educated people who have absorbed some of this nonsense by osmosis. So yeah, I would say, the U.S. administration, a lot of the ideas forming it were hatched in QAnon.
How did they come after you? What way did they come? Sorry, go on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I didn't hear the story of them coming after you. What's the deal with that?
Oh, I mean, that's always been the case since the 1980s. I have been the focus of all kinds of conspiracy theories. I mean, the most ridiculous and common. I mean, people look back at the 80s interviews that I did that you referred to earlier. I heard a little bit of your introduction. Christian evangelicals, if you look online, you'll see hundreds of them thinking that I was the pioneer of the New World Order. You probably know that one of the ideas of this modern conspiracy theory internet mythology is that the Illuminati must announce what we are doing to humanity before that, like we have some kind of code of honor in which we must reveal our plan. And people look back at the interviews I did in the 80s, and actually believe that I was announcing, what the New World Order plan was.
They think you are the Grandmaster of the Illuminati, is it?
Well,
And
at least a member of, and if you look online, you'll see that many people believe that my ex-wife and I were the parents of Taylor Swift, who was an Illuminati breeding project.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, but I mean, if you saw my music video, I begin it with an actual Christian propaganda video that was made, in which one of these interviews that I gave in the 80s is used, and they use the same clip over and over again to try to demonstrate how I was, the pioneer of this New World Order concept, which I've never believed in and certainly was not. But one thing I've learned, we have gone too far into the abyss of ignorance to correct people. We are truly in a dark age now. The level of ignorance is so much deeper than it was even during the Satanic Panic.
You think so?
Oh yeah, definitely.
But back then, all they had was the TV. People just obeyed really what was on the TV, the 3 channels. And while the channels were better and people were better educated generally, there was more of a straightforward, like across the board propaganda and across consensus of belief, for better and worse, arguably. Now it's like a mash of information. A lot of it's wrong. Like everyone joins their own bubble of where they think they belong and believe what they believe more, I guess.
Yes, that's true on one hand, but I think people were better educated in the generations before the 80s. There was much more skepticism about all that, and it didn't leak out of the Christian evangelical megachurch moral majority Reagan circles. The belief systems now I see QAnon as a development of the Satanic Panic, but the Satanic Panic itself goes back to conspiracy theories that were in Paris in the 1890s. And it goes back, as I've mentioned in some other interviews, to the occult author Nesta Webster, who wrote about secret societies in the early part of the 20th century. So if you really look into it, this is a tradition of irrational, insane thinking. And the internet has just exacerbated it and allowed people, as you say, to live in little islands of their own algorithm. They're never really challenged by any other opinion. The difference in the 80s is that when you only had a few networks, everybody of every political and ideological persuasion had to encounter other beliefs. Now you can live completely in your own bubble. And this, I think, is very dangerous, and what creates the insanity of our times is this complete ideological commitment and the us versus them attitude that comes with it.
CP Webster says, we have one viewer at least. Nestor is not, as far as I know, a relative, but I am familiar with her work.
Nesta Webster is the name of the author. If you look into Nesta Webster, you will see that she really created the foundation of a lot of the ideas of the conspiracy theory of our time.
Well, they did get a lot of it out of, they love Freemasons and that. And there is or was even, like I'm friends, or at least acquaintances, with Lord Dunsany, the current Lord Dunsany. The famous Lord Dunsany, the writer.
I'm aware of the fiction, the fantasy writer Lord Dunsany, of course.
So the current Lord Dunsany, they call him the Heavy Metal Baron, and he's into veganism and rewilding and stuff. But so I've been to his castle, and it's cool. He's got all these letters of correspondence between the writer, great grandfather, and like Aleister Crowley and H.P. Lovecraft and Tolkien and all these amazing things. But then he's like, I remember a couple places you go into a room, and he's got some big kind of like just an elaborate sort of wood carving on the wall with like lions and stags or whatever, and he points, he's like, look up there at the top, and I'm like, what's that? And I forget even what the symbol was. He's like, Freemasons. But this is him in his own house, his own castle. Okay, yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't put I know many Freemasons, and I've looked into Freemasonry a great deal. I don't put in any credence into the fact that they are a powerful secret society.
Well, they
Of
were, I
course.
think. Were they at one time? They were, right, in the early days of America. That were they not? Would you not say that?
Yeah, but I mean, they didn't have any kind of occult powers or anything like that. They were forced during the time of monarchy and Christian dominance of everything because they were free thinkers and had different ideas and used some ideas that went back to the Rosicrucian period, which in itself was a hoax and a kind of deliberate conspiracy theory. But I mean, I have to make it clear, they're a powerful, corrupt people, as we can see in plain view right now at this moment, who try to hold on to their power by using, controlling the masses, controlling information. But I absolutely do not believe that there are powerful secret societies. I think that is a great overestimation of human nature. And I think the incompetence of most people, if anyone, the people who believe in this stuff are people who've never had power, who've never tried to achieve something.
Yeah.
If you've ever tried to actually make something happen, you know how inefficient and incompetent people are and how hard it is
Yeah.
for them to keep a secret.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know that that's almost become blasphemy because it's so much. People feel so powerless now. At least the underclass of people who are very desperately paranoid about everything. They need to believe that they know what's really going on, because otherwise they would have to accept a more horrible truth that nobody's in control, that nobody's at the wheel, that this is total chaos.
A headless machine. Well, that's like the. I know you despise the Trump regime, but I was very interested in the whole U.S. aid business. I don't know if you kept track of that, and all the money that was going here, like the level they call it corruption, but it's more just like you're saying, these chaos of actual human behavior and action. Someone siphoning off millions and billions and here and over there and like wherever.
Well, that to me is just hyper capitalism in action. That I don't really. I mean, people who believe in conspiracy theories, if they just looked at the names of the people who own all the major corporations that have a monopoly on everything, it's right out in plain view. You don't have to look for secret activity. It's right now and I do have to make it clear that not only do I despise the Trump regime, I don't even think the United States of America was a good idea in the first place. I mean, I rejected it completely decades.
And you're such a child of California. You're such a child of California. That's funny that you would totally reject it. But yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't particularly feel enamored of California either. I mean, I have connected to Europe, and I am a Eurocentric thinker, and I don't believe in the founding fathers concept. So I voted with my feet by leaving the United States decades ago. So
You did.
I'm looking at it from a very different perspective. I'm not looking. Also, I'm a cultural pessimist. I don't believe it's going to get better. I think the American empire is over, and I think it's been falling apart largely since November 22nd, 1963, with the Kennedy assassination. I think there's been a power vacuum.
Right. Okay. And why specifically then? Just because of what he was going to do with the
No, I think, well, actually, I've been working for several years on a mega novel, a many part novel called The Dallas Book of the Dead, that uses the Kennedy assassination as a metaphor for the whole era of disbelief. I think that date was the time when people no longer believed what governments and authorities were telling them. And I think the seed or the cancer of this complete lack of belief in anything, this almost postmodern denial that anything at all is true, where it gets to the point where everything is a false flag operation. And, any news event, conspiracy theorists think it's some kind of staged CGI operation, PSYOP.
Yeah.
I think it all began then, and so in my novel I use that as a metaphor for the very nature of reality, which I think is my basic theme in all of my work.
That does sound like a good novel and an excellent name. And I would agree about the American Empire being over. I thought, I'm so you would you have a preference for, say, monarchy and that kind of governance, do you? Like old
Well,
statecraft.
yes, I am a monarchist. I do believe that monarchy is the most. I think monarchy is the form of governance that suits the human animal best. I think that it is rooted in. I'm a traditionalist as well. Now, when I say monarchy, a lot of people think that means that I think any absolute authority would be okay, but I don't. I mean literally monarchy. But I'm also not a nostalgist. We cannot return to monarchy, but I believe that after World War I, when the Habsburg, the Hohenzollerns, the Ottoman, the Romanov empires fell apart, I think we've been in a moral and cultural free fall since then. And I think all the various ideologies that have tried to fill the gap of the ancient monarchies have failed. And I think we can see that when we look at the world right now at this very moment.
Yeah. Do you like Julius Evola or not?
Yes, I think Evola had a lot of insights. I'm not a fanatic about him. I certainly read all of Evola's work when I was in my 20s and 30s. I don't think Evola was really an initiate. I think he was more of a scholar, and I don't think he got everything right. I think Evola had certain ideas that I certainly have resonance with, but then there's a lot of it that I don't agree with, and a lot of it that is fundamentally inaccurate, because I am a stickler for historical accuracy. But I would say René Guénon means more to me as a traditionalist. I think he actually had a deeper spiritual understanding of the crisis of modernity.
And what do you think of his solution to become Islamic?
Well, I reject all three Abrahamic religions, and from a Gnostic point of view, I do believe that the God of the Abrahamic religions is indeed the demiurge, Ialdabaoth, that the Gnostics speak of. But I do understand the impulse. Well, I think a valuable thing about Guénon, I was thinking about this earlier today when speaking to a student of mine, his concept of counter-initiation, that in the time when he was writing in the 1920s, phenomena like theosophy and Crowley and Gurdjieff and the whole, if you want to call it the Western occult tradition, he called all of that counter-initiation. And I do believe that all of those things, that modern Western occultism is a kind of dead end or a kind of waste product of real spiritual activity. And it seems initiatory, but I think Guénon's phrase counter-initiation is more accurate for what it is. So I myself rejected Western occultism after being deeply involved with it from my youth, until the 90s, really. I rejected it completely. And like Guénon, I converted to Tantric Buddhism, which is an extremely traditional religious legacy and connected to a lineage. And so I've rejected the sort of do-it-yourself nature of modern occultism completely. So in that regard, I do not support Islam. I do think there is wisdom in Sufism, which I looked into before I became a Tantric Buddhist in great detail, but ultimately did not become a Sufi. I studied it, I got involved with Sufi masters, but the basic impetus of my work is leading back to tradition. I do believe that you have to have a direction, that you have to connect yourself to an actual goal. And this sort of eclectic, cherry-picking, buffet-style occultism is not useful.
So do you still consider yourself a follower of Set?
I heard you say that.
Yes, yes. I mean, Set exists. The god Set exists, and since about 1983, when I went to Egypt and had a religious experience in the tomb of Seti the First, the pharaoh, I'm, yes, I'm very much a devotee of the god Set, and I work with other gods, Aphrodite, Venus, Tezcatlipoca, and other deities as needed for magical operations. I mean, all of the pantheons of gods exist, and I do work with them, but I would say Set is the principal deity that I am connected to.
Well, that's interesting. That is very interesting. So you're essentially a pagan. And
Well, I know that I drive people crazy with the pedantic nature of my focus on etymology and correct definition. I don't use the word pagan because pagan is a word that the Roman Catholic Church used as a pejorative for, folk traditions that were not Christian.
Yeah.
Basically, pagan means paganus, the people of the countryside. So
Yeah.
I think that sort of gives Christianity a dignity that I wouldn't give it, as if it is the legitimate religion and everything else is rejecting it.
True, but it is a cool sounding word.
Yeah, but that's kind of the problem. Its coolness makes it a very easy instant identity for. I think the problem is a lot of people choose that word pagan as a reaction to Christianity rather than a devotion to an actual spiritual tradition.
Right.
I mean, when you think, the ancient Egyptian religion of the Neteru, the gods, lasted longer than Christianity has yet. Christianity is a very new religion comparatively. So, yeah, I don't use the word pagan. I don't really use the word occultist. I think those words are still in a context that makes it seem like you're being alternative to Christianity.
Right. So you just go with Tantric Buddhist, and you Sorry.
I should make it clear. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say most Tantric Buddhists, I don't know that much about it. Would they include worship of other gods like that? Would they include magic rituals?
Well, as I explained this in a recent interview I did about sort of debunking the Temple of Set, in which I got into my Setian practice in more detail. I recently did that interview. Tantric Buddhism, definitely, I mean, all forms of Buddhism, except that there are 6 worlds of being, and one of those worlds of being is the Diva Loka, or the divine realm. So Buddhism has always accepted that there are deities, that there are gods, but Tantric Buddhism and other forms of Buddhism don't see the gods as completely decisive. We do not believe that they created the world, or that we are totally dominated by the gods. So my Setian practice is separate from my Tantric Buddhist practice. They are not mingled, and I think that's very important to make clear. But as you can be a practicing Buddhist and be a devotee of other deities, but you have to be careful not to mingle them. They are 2 separate traditions.
Right. Okay. So it's 2 worlds at once in some ways. So
Right.
let me just, I was curious about your mindset when you were full on practicing devil worship, because you said, you alluded there at the beginning that it began as the band and as part of the theatrics of the band, but that you were also sort of serious about it. So back then you believed in the devil as it's understood Abrahamically. Is that correct? You had this sort of Abrahamic belief back then, in a sense.
Well, that's sort of complicated. I see what you're saying, but let me try to clarify that.
Okay.
As a child, I was immediately drawn, as soon as I can even think or remember any kind of thought, I was drawn to Greek mythology and Nordic mythology instantly, to the point where I'm quite certain that I had memories of past lives in those traditions. And then when I was very young, and I've told the story before, I don't want to repeat it for those out there who may have heard it, I was drawn to devil worship and to the figure of Satan especially because of the story in the Bible of Jesus encountering the Satan in the desert, and the particular phrase, "All these things I will give you if you worship me," if you remember that part of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So really going back to the occult revival in the 60s and early 70s, I already was, and I use the word devil worshiper to describe that period of my initiation deliberately, to separate it from Satanist, because Satanist these days has become, like so many things, an empty word. Many Satanists are just atheists, or people LARPing to reject Christianity, or to be transgressive or shocking. I had a
Yeah.
sincere and genuine devotion to what I believed was the devil at that time.
And were you not concerned about the going to hell part? That's what I was saying before you came on. Does that not keep you awake at night?
No, because I know you mentioned in our pre-interview that you wanted me to discuss the nature of hell. No, I wasn't concerned about that, because I didn't have the traditional Abrahamic idea about the devil. The way that I saw it was sort of, even though when I was very young, I was not completely familiar with Gnosticism, I sort of had a kind of proto-Gnostic idea that Yahweh, or God, is a tyrant, is a malevolent. I never thought that God was good and the devil was evil. I thought, on the contrary, that Yahweh was the evil and malevolent being, which I still believe. The reason that I stopped being a devil worshiper and being involved with Satan is because through my research and through my own initiatory work with this being, I've given lectures on it. I sent you a link to some. If your viewers want to get a more comprehensive idea of it, I gave a lecture at the Wave Gothic Treffen a few years ago called "Everything You Know About Satan is Wrong." Ultimately, I rejected the devil because I came to understand that he is not the opponent of the demiurge, but he is his assistant. He's a minor. The Satan is actually intrinsically connected to the Abrahamic religions. There is no way to separate him, and he is God's servant. He's God's lieutenant. He's his enforcer who comes to earth to tempt and to challenge and to make sure that you're being loyal to Yahweh. So very far from being an adversary or an opponent of God, he's a minor lieutenant of God, if that makes sense to you.
Oh yeah. And when did you get introduced to the Gnostic text, Gnostic thinking? Like, I don't think when you appeared, say, on Sally Jess Raphael, you were already in this frame of mind, or were you?
Oh, well, yes, I certainly knew. I mean, I've always read everything about every religion. That's been my main concern. You have to remember that when I was doing things like Sally Jesse Raphael and Geraldo and those kind of trash television shows, we were literally defending ourselves. I mean, the Satanic Panic was not a joke. We were being accused of child sacrifice, of murder, of crime. I mean, the LAPD tried to frame me for murder during that time. The only reason we went on those talk shows was because we were defending ourselves against the persecution of the Reagan right-wing Christian evangelical movement, which was extreme. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't pleasant. It wasn't fun. We were fighting a war, and many other people were fighting that war. Many innocent people who practiced any kind of religion that was not Christianity were persecuted at that time. So those appearances on television really were a necessity. We had to defend ourselves. Concerts that I was trying to put on were canceled by the police. There was an extreme amount of law enforcement persecution from religious, during the Reagan Bush era. So that was a necessary act of survival.
Right, I see. And you were brave enough to put the face on it and go out there, and I guess Xena as well. But
Well,
like, did
I
you?
mean, I credit Zena with the lion's share. I mean, she began before me, and she was out there many years before. And I think really she succeeded in merely by being there and being so eloquent and brave. I mean, I think she had a major part to play in defeating that phase of the satanic panic.
Right.
However, it's back. It's back, and it's much stronger and more malevolent than it ever was, and crazier than it ever was.
Well, there's a lot of. Oh, how do I explain it? Yeah. I mean, I'm not done grilling you about your past, let's say, but
No, grill away.
well, okay. So before I lose sight of my other questions, yeah, I do, because I do want to get into the internet culture today and the weirdness of the people that turn and become Orthodox Catholics because of Twitter posts and things, and people that you knew previously that were normal enough are suddenly berating you for nudes or language, and like just becoming really. I mean, it's always the case that people sort of sign up and become like born again and get into some crazy religious overdrive. But and I don't, you have had a war with these people, and you're openly so. Like, I personally don't try to attack Christians overly unless they really annoy me. Christianity as a
Well,
whole.
I never.
I feel like it's just part of us over the last 2,000 years. And people that say people like Varg, let's say, who totally reject it and say, "Fuck you, this is," I always just think, well, it's inescapably part of our morality. It was part of us over those 2,000 years, and I don't know. I don't think it's true, or I don't think we're talking truthfully if we say not that we're indebted to it or anything like that, but just that it's intrinsically, like it or not, it's sort of part of us in a way that we can't just totally. I mean, I know you probably totally renounce it and want nothing to do with it, but this is how I feel. I guess it's hard for me to explain.
Well, I think it's very important to know people from every ideology, every belief system. I know people who I disagree, and I'm friends with people who I disagree with 100%. I think that is a necessary part of mental health, to be confronted with ideas that completely are the. I mean, there are some things that I would draw a moral line on, but I know people who
you were friends with Ramirez. That was shocking to me. I was like, well, how could you be friends with Ramirez? How did you? Just
let me answer your question about Christianity first, but remind me if I digress. We can get back to Richard, and it is connected actually.
Okay.
The teaching of Jesus, because I am also a Gnostic, the actual teaching of the Christ, I have no problem with whatsoever.
Right.
The problem I have from a Gnostic point of view is I do not believe that the Roman Catholic and Evangelical Church is presenting the actual teaching of the Christ, which is actually a mystical process of initiation. I believe it is a false distortion of the teaching of Christ. And Gnostics believe, I don't know how much you're aware of it, that the Father of Christ is not Yahweh, not Ealdaboth, not the Demiurge, but a transcendent God above the Demiurge. I don't know how familiar you are with the Gnostic belief.
I just have heard bits and pieces. I haven't I don't even know what source I would get to fully read it completely or know all the ins and outs of it. Like what you're telling me, that they even so you have a certain worship for Jesus, the Gnostic Jesus, you would say.
I wouldn't say I have a worship, but I respect the teaching, the actual teaching of the Gnostic Christ, I believe is true. But I don't think that has anything to do with what mainstream Christianity presents. So I reject all three Abrahamic religions as a manifestation of the malevolent demiurge, 100%.
Right. And
I don't think that that there's something good about the fact that Europe was overtaken by the Roman Catholic Church and that Christianity shaped Western culture. I mean, are there aspects of it that were useful? Yes, like anything, nothing is 100% malevolent, but I think for the most part, its legacy has been horrific. And I think the most horrific form of it is the Christian evangelical movement in the United States of America.
Well, I've heard people theorize that was a kind of a creation, a political creation. I don't know if you've heard this.
Yes, I believe it is. I think most
Yeah.
not all, because I do know American Christians that are sincere and actually mystical, adherents of the actual teaching of Christ.
Yep.
Yeah, most of what Christianity is in America is using a spiritual tradition to justify political objectives. Obviously, that's so obvious. I think a child could see that.
Yeah, well, the like evangelicalism as we know it, I think it really was like largely a television invention by those guys. Who was the original guy? It wasn't Swaggart. It was
well, Billy Graham actually.
Billy Graham, yeah.
But I mean, that in the 19th century, the revival meetings. I mean, the basic problem with the United States, as I see it, is that the seed of it is Salem. The seed of it is the Pilgrims, the Puritans, who very far from the whitewash narrative of America's origin did not come to bring religious freedom, but to persecute, to destroy sinners. They were thrown out of England because they were so fanatical. And I think at the heart of the American nightmare is Salem, is looking for demons within, looking for the sinners, looking for the other to persecute. And I think the Salem witch hunt, that to me is the essence of the United States. And that's why I think the current madness that's going on in the United States, when liberals or secular humanists, you hear this cliche where they say, this isn't us, or we're better than this. No, that is you. That is America. Trump and his gallery of grotesques, they are the very quintessence of America. They are it. That I think America has reached its perfect state with this, this manifestation of it. I think he is the very essence, his greed, his vulgarity, his stupidity, his total lack of understanding of history, his hypocrisy, his deceit, and that of all the hypocrites who support him for their various selfish reasons. I think that is America, and I don't think it's going to change. I think this goes back to the Salem experience, if you follow my point there.
I do, yeah. But like current modern life in Germany, would you find it so removed from what you had left behind?
Completely. I spent about 5 months in the United States for the first time since 2019, working on some film documentaries that I'm making, and I am haunted by what I saw in the United States. And coming back to Germany after 5 months there was culture shock completely. It's radically different in every way.
You mean like seeing like junkies in the street and stuff like that, or haunted? Like in what sense?
No, just there. I think I've always thought there is some metaphysical calamity about the United States. I even think that it goes back before the American settlers. I think there's something metaphysically wrong with the United States.
Oh, that's great.
And I've always felt that way. But no, it could not. Just the basic feeling of being in Germany, of being in Europe, where I was in London recently. It's like another dimension. At least that is my personal experience of it.
Well, I'm happy to have moved from Canada to Europe as well, and to be part of the older tradition. But like, we are all living in the American Empire, and I think it's gonna, to some degree, take us all down with it. I mean, to various degrees. I don't know.
Well, definitely. I mean, Ireland and Germany have very deep-rooted traditions that I think are going to keep them a little more solid. But yeah, exactly. I mean, as I said, I'm a cultural pessimist in the Spenglerian sense.
Yes, Spengler was right. I'm sure Spengler was right. Yeah.
Yeah, and the collapse of the Roman Empire led basically to the Dark Ages, and the collapse of this very short-lived United States empire, which is absolutely happening and has been happening, is going it's going to transform the whole world. It's going to be like a black hole, that supernova, as it's happening right now. It's
Well, it won't be
collapsing.
all bad. Yeah, it won't be all bad. These things have to happen. You have to go through
No,
these things.
nothing is all bad. It is already leading. I think, okay, one of the things I have to say is that in the 1990s, when the Werewolf Order, which was the organization from which Radio Werewolf came from, that was the initiatory organization behind it.
You mean the German one?
When the wall fell and we moved to Europe in the early 90s, we believed that Europe would again regain its cultural centrality in civilization, and that the fall of the Soviet Union, and that Europeans would reject American culture, and that Europe would come back into its own. Well, that didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
And Europe is still weak and divisive, and Europeans have still not figured out that they better unite against Russia and the United States and China. They're still doing business with these entities, and so that's when I gave up hope on political or ideological change. In the 90s, I saw that it didn't happen.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any such luxury. I think frankly, I think America will collapse, and then China and Russia will dominate Europe, is what will happen.
I'm more like China. I think Russia is very fragile at the moment. I mean, certainly Putin will try, but yeah, there's no good alternative, and the enemy of my enemy is not my friend. I don't think Russia, China, or America, none of them are anything that I want anything to do with.
I don't think there'll be a choice. Yeah, frankly, just the way America is now, I think if it's Russian, it might be slightly better.
I have absolutely no sympathy for Putin or his regime whatsoever.
I know, but just like it won't be the same kind of total junk culture stuff. Exactly. What do they do? They wouldn't try to. You think what?
How many Russians do you know that actually lived in Russia?
Oh, just online, I know a few. But
well, I know a lot of people who escaped Putin's Russia, and I think there's a great deal of romanticizing.
I don't think it's great. I just don't think. I think it's America, especially as it goes down and down and down. It's just, I don't know.
I think it's like a choice between, do you want leukemia or the Black Plague?
Well, yeah, I mean, it'd be great if York would just stand on his own 2 feet. I mean, that would be great, but it's so.
Well, I don't have a lot of hope that will happen, but I do think the collapse of America is going to lead, and it already has led Europe to see that it needs to see that America is not trustworthy, that America is insane, that it.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a very complicated, messy business, isn't it? I mean, who knows? But it's kind of interesting. At least things are happening again. For a long time there, I just felt like the world was getting more and more corporate. America had total. There was the end of what was it? The end of history. Fukuyama's idea.
Right.
That it was this,
I never believed
liberalism from now on, and that was it.
Corporate. It couldn't be more corporate now. Now we have corporate techno feudalism happening, oligarchy.
Yeah. But these things are changing again. It's like history did not end. You know what I mean? Like it feels like big things are going to happen at least. So we won't be just trapped in that kind of post-80s yuppie forever world of shopping malls and that. I just believe it's all. I believe it's all going to get swept away. I think that's good.
There have been these cycles in history many times. After the Napoleonic Wars, there was a long period of peace in Europe. And when World War I happened, it shocked the civilized world. It seemed impossible that could happen after the very long period of peace and general progress after the Napoleonic War. So these cycles have always happened. But from a spiritual point of view, as a Buddhist, and this is a pan-Indian idea, also with Hindu and Hindu Tantra, this is the Kali Yuga. It isn't going to get better. Any idea that it's going to be improved is naivete. It has been prophesied that there will be this collapse of civilizations, of spiritual awareness for a very long time. And
But it depends
And
how
it's,
long it lasts, right? It depends on how long it actually does last. I mean, they speculate that, what, 10,000 years or something, but maybe hopefully they got that wrong and it's like 100 years or something.
I know people who are hoping that all of this will end quicker, but I'm afraid it will be a long, lingering collapse. But
Well,
you
like I
know,
said, anything's better than an unending, sustained Fukuyama world of, corporate
well,
office jobs.
that was an illusion. That was
Yeah.
a kind of trance that could never be. I don't think that ever had any veracity. But
You probably skipped
drifted
over that
off.
whole world.
We drifted
You probably
away
missed
from your questions.
Oh, right. Yeah. What was it?
About Ramirez,
Ah, yes.
and right before that, there was another thing you were saying about Christianity, but I think I answered that.
Yeah, probably. And Gnosticism and how you entered Gnosticism. That's interesting to me. And then you just immediately took it up and thought, okay, this is the truth. What were your sources that you read?
Well, I have to say that even before and another book that I'm working on is about Abraxas, the one of the main divine figures of Gnosticism.
Yes.
And that basically, I write my books when people ask me so many questions about a topic. I figure I have to just put it all down so I never have to talk about it again. Which doesn't happen anyway, because then I'm asked to be interviewed about that topic for all of eternity. So it doesn't work, but I try. But
Well, I heard you talk about Abraxas, and you said the Germans are and always have been into Abraxas. You said something
this is something I get into in the book. Strangely, Abraxas is not very widely known in the rest of the Western world, but Goethe was the first thinker to really mention Abraxas in a poem, a very long time ago, centuries ago. And Jung, who is very important in Germanic culture, Hermann Hesse, rather forgotten religious writer named Albrecht Diedrich wrote a book about Abraxas. So in German culture, for some reason, even one of the first operas after the fall of the Third Reich, one of the first German operas that gained any kind of worldwide success as Germany was being accepted again into the community of nations after World War II, was called Abraxas. So for some strange reason, German scholars have really looked into Abraxas a lot. One of my mentors, Dr. Stephen Heller, is from Hungary, but he also was in Austria and very much connected to Germanic culture. And he's an expert on Abraxas. So that's a very strange anomaly I don't really have an explanation of why the god really manifested in Teutonic culture.
And is Abraxas the chief god? I don't even know this, so pardon me, because you just said he's one of the gods of Gnosticism.
Well,
is he the chief god? Is he the chief god of Gnosticism?
Well, first of all, the Gnosticism is a phrase that Christians used as a pejorative to almost to insult beliefs that were not mainstream Christianity. The Gnostics themselves didn't really call themselves that, so it's sort of a historical phrase of convenience to describe these movements.
What do they call themselves?
Well, they believe themselves to be Christians.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, right, yeah.
They believe themselves to be the true Christians. Abraxas there was in Alexandria the teaching of Basilides, who was the founder of the Basilidian Gnostic movement, and he believed that Abraxas was the principal god, the real god, the god from which consciousness descended, and that the demiurge was an imposter god who believed himself to be the creator of the world. So,
right.
Yeah, but anyway, the book that I'm writing about.
Does that put Abraxas as the chief Gnostic god? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the chief god, and I do believe that is actually true. I do believe that in this particular corner of whatever reality we're in, which we think is the universe, which we think is our reality, I believe that being, and the name Abraxas is not even its name. That is a symbol that is used to refer to something that transcends human understanding.
That's very Platonist. A very Platonist thing to say, actually. Wait, yeah.
Yeah. the symbols of Abraxas, what it looks like, its name, is a way for the human mind, for the mortal mind, to conceive of something that is infinitely transcendent to human consciousness. It's like a signpost to something above that. But yeah, but basically the Basilidian form of Gnosticism believed that Abraxas was the true Godhead, and that the God of the Abrahamic religions was an imposter God.
And what do they say of the nature of Abraxas? Is there much literature on this that they would have left, or is there any?
No, there isn't, and that's why it sort of became necessary for me to write the definitive book on what is known about it from my own magical experience with this god and from historical sources.
Right. So the Gnostics.
Now, before we get lost, you wanted to get into Ramirez. So
Yeah.
what
Sure.
did you want to know about Richard?
Oh, what was it? Well, just you were saying, you made a comment about being discriminating about your friends, and I just thought of that, how you were pals. You said you were pals with him, but I'm sure you.
Well,
and also, actually, just in reference to that, because you said earlier on that you were fighting a war in the Satanic Panic and all the rest of it, but then you openly and publicly befriended him, and that seemed. I was just wondering, what were you thinking then? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think that most of
we're talking about. Sorry, Ramirez, the Night Stalker, the serial killer, for people that don't know.
Yeah, if people don't know, and I was recently in an NBC Peacock documentary called the Night Stalker tapes about Ramirez.
Yeah, that was good. You sent me that. That was good. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see what I had to say about my friendship with Ramirez in that documentary, which is on Peacock, which I think is available in America at least. It may not be in Europe. I'm not sure. Well, see, most of these people that I got involved with they came out of my research. They came out of my writing. I was writing a book in 1989 called The Demonic Revolution, which is why I met Anton LaVey and befriended him, which is why I met and interviewed many of the major occult figures of that time, Kenneth Grant, Edred Thorson, Aquino. The reason I met these people was not out of some particular bond with them, but because I was researching them. So I felt that it was necessary during the Satanic Panic to show the other side that, yeah, there were dangerous people who consider themselves Satanists, that they were not all benevolent or law-abiding. So I did have a chapter on satanic crime. So I contacted Ramirez.
Right. Yeah.
I wrote to him in February of 1988, and he wrote to me immediately back. He already knew who I was, so he was very happy to talk to me. So he invited me to. This was during his trial, so I attended a great deal of his trial, and I was talking to him to interview him for the book. And we actually found that we had a rapport. We liked each other. We had something in common. We got along. Right. And I believe part of what we had in common was our dealing with, if you are familiar with the tradition of the Goetia, of Goetic demons.
Not really. Sorry. No.
Okay. If your viewers look up the Goetia, Goetia, is an occult system involving 72 spirits. And it turned out that Ramirez had worked with this tradition, and I had too. And I feel that we recognized in each other the same spiritual force. So he began as a subject, somebody that, and eventually he wanted us to write a biography of him, like to help him write his autobiography. So he talked to us a great deal about his crimes, about his spiritual beliefs, and we became friends with him. And as this kind of sums up the Satanic Panic experience, there was a point where the LAPD, were accusing us of all of the things that Satanists are accused of, and a homicide detective involved with the LAPD, we actually had to go make a meeting with him to say, look, we are not killing people, we're not sacrificing people. And he believed us, and we befriended this homicide detective, and he asked us to help him solve occult crimes, like to look whenever there was an occult symbol at a crime scene to help them interpret it and that kind of thing. So we actually
Really?
became allies with our enemy.
Did you solve any crimes this way?
No, I don't. Maybe I don't mean that we solve them, but we like. Okay, if there was a tarot card left at a murder or a graffiti that had some sort of occult symbolism, could we help them interpret it? So we did that, and you know, it'd be like Dracula making friends with Van Helsing.
Yeah.
So now at this, we were doing a Radio Werewolf concert at that time in 1990, and this homicide detective called us right before and said the sheriff's department is going to storm the stage, arrest you, and frame you for something. This was one of several attempts to frame us during that period. At the same time, Richard Ramirez called very early in the morning, like at 6 in the morning one morning, and he said there was some federal agent here to talk to me this morning. And I thought, well, what was that about? And he thought at first it was about him, maybe looking into other murders he committed. He said, no. And I remember he said, man, they are after your ass. They were just asking me about you. So when you have the LAPD and Richard Ramirez both warning you, you know, that was the intensity of what the Satanic Panic was like.
And Richard Ramirez. So when he would call you though and relate to you his crimes, you said, like, what would you say? You'd be like, oh yeah, you know, what would you say to him? Like, would you not say, oh geez, fucking hell, Richard, how could you do? You know, we not.
Yeah, well, we made it clear that we didn't approve of what he did, and strangely, I think I mentioned this in the Peacock documentary. He knew that we taught magic, and he always believed that we were getting away with murder. He did not believe that, you know, he thought, I wish I had known you earlier and I could have gotten away with this. So he kind of like, he thought, well, because we were in jail with him, we weren't admitting that we were killing people too. So he never really could.
He believed all Satanists were killers, you mean, sort of?
He really did think we were getting away with murder, even though we told him not. So, you know, I did find that I had I could get along with him. I had a rapport with him. I don't approve of anything he did, but you know, as I said, I'm an investigative reporter in a way. I look deeply into subjects that other people don't want to look into, and I try to understand them. It doesn't mean that I necessarily approve of them.
Right. Well, and you said in one of the videos I listened to that you thought he was actually very well read, and he was curious about the world and not at all the person in the courtroom was like an act he put on.
Yeah.
Although you said later on he kind of lost it and that he became stupid or something.
Well, his incredible amount of street drug use eventually fucked up his liver completely. Right. He had a brief period of lucidity when he wasn't taking drugs, where he was actually bright and intelligent and inquisitive and articulate. And then he sort of fell apart in the latter half of his life because the liver damage, you know, you get hepatitis, it goes to your brain, it fucks up your organs, and he really started to get deranged, like masturbating in front of women that came to visit him, that kind of thing.
Oh, then he became deranged after all this.
Yeah.
I mean, when you read about his crimes, actually, like, of all the killers, one of the most impulsive animals of them all, I think, like a just random absolute. It seemed like he could do anything, potentially anything, and he was on a path of committing evil for its own sake, as well as, you know, his personal thrills or whatever. But
right. Well, I've known a lot of criminals of all kinds, you know, in the underworld or other serial killers. I spoke to Gacy. Obviously, I knew Charles Manson very well for over 30 years. Yeah. The difference, the reason why I wanted to write about him in this book, The Demonic Revolution, was because he was unabashedly wanting to be evil. He admitted that he did these things, and he believed that his goal as a Satanist should be to be as evil as possible. And this gets into your much earlier question about hell. He wanted to go to hell. he sort of reversed Catholicism and believed that if you commit enough evil deeds, you will be welcomed into hell, where you'll be like a VIP in the infernal realm. So that was, you know, so it's very rare to meet criminals that revel in their being evil, but he had no shame and he wanted to be considered evil. So I thought that was why I wanted to document him in the book, because most Satanists don't do that. You know, they actually pretend, well, we're not evil. We're actually very good at the other people that are.
Yeah, like King Diamond or whatever. Most of them seem like just like atheists, basically, like your pal LaVey, just kind of.
Well, that's why I use the phrase devil worshiper for that period of my life, because Satanism just sort of means anti-Christian atheist with kind of secular humanist ideas. It's not really satanic.
And can you tell us then about two things I want to know about? You had this experience where you were meditating, and on the day he died, you felt he came to you. And not only that he came to you, that he was on his way to hell. So I'd like to hear about that experience, and also what is your concept of where he was going exactly?
Right. Well, I was in a Buddhist meditation retreat, so I had no contact with anybody at that time, totally alone and in solitude meditating. And during that period, I had a lot of intense dreams, because if you're meditating intensively, it does tend to connect you to the dream bardo, which is another level of consciousness, just as this level of reality that we're experiencing is a level of consciousness. And I had a dream that I met him in a very institutional, sterile, clinical, underground place that felt like a hospital or a morgue, or like the Platonic ideal of the worst school, you know, just like an institution of some kind. And there were thousands of people on a line going infinitely ahead. And I was in this line, and Richard was right in front of me, and he turned around.
Oh, shit.
I was on this line, and Richard turned around. He was right in front of me, and he said, "Oh, I like," he smiled and said, "I thought you'd be here, man. I knew I'd run into you down here." And I realized where we were immediately, and what this line of people were going into. This was like the antechamber to the inferno.
And were you terrified?
No. In the dream I said, "I'm not staying here. I'm here to get you out."
Get him out.
Yeah. And that's what I said. And then he kind of like lost attention and wandered off and went down with these thousands of people who were online to enter the actual, you know, inferno. And I know, okay, so I didn't have any connection to the outer world for about a week at that time. When I got out, my ex-wife Zena said, "Richard died." And it turned out that he died that day that I had the dream. So I have no doubt that that was like a last visitation. I had no way of knowing that. I hadn't really thought about him much for years. Yeah. And I'm sure that I encountered him there. And I guess you were asking me, well, what is my idea of hell? In Buddhism, as I've explained before, and I don't think a lot of people know this, because people assume that it's simply an Abrahamic idea. Hell and different levels of hells, many hells and heavens, are a part of the Buddhist cosmology. So if you have really negative karma, you're going to go straight to what are called the hell realms. So obviously Richard, you know, his karma of murder
was pretty bad.
Would bring him immediately there, and I'm sure he'll be there for many thousands of years until he exhausts that negative karma.
And you believe, does everyone go through this period of negative of hell based on?
Well, the Buddhist teaching is that we have all gone through the process of what is called compulsive rebirth, or what is more commonly known as reincarnation, billions of times. So we have been in the 6 worlds of being. We've been everything. We've been in hell. We have been ghosts. We have been animals. We have been humans. We have been asuras, which is a level above human, but not quite divine. and we have been gods. So we have all reincarnated so many billions of times. We've gone through this cycle of what is called samsara forever, infinitely, endlessly. There is a phrase, beginningless time. So we've all reincarnated so many times as so many beings. We've been in hell, we've been in heaven, we've been everything.
So the Buddhist hell is a temporary. That would be the main difference between the Abrahamics. It's a temporary state.
Well, yes, everything is impermanent. You could actually be reborn if you had very positive karma. You could be reborn in the divine realm as a god, but eventually you would exhaust the positive karma you gained, and you would die, but after thousands of years, and then you would descend again to the lowest level. So the point is of Buddhism is that you want to become liberated from this whole cycle of reincarnation.
Yeah.
You don't want to be reincarnated as any of these 6 forms of being. You want to be freed from the whole cycle of suffering.
Right. And by having no ego, is it the same as the Hindus, where you're to not have any ego about it to the point of not actually desiring to escape it, or something like that?
Yeah, ego is a tricky word because in European and Western languages, ego has a totally negative connotation that always implies just selfishness.
Yeah.
The Buddhist idea is more the illusion of an independent self. It is more that we experience the illusion that we are individual beings that are totally separate from all other beings, that we are some kind of sovereign, individuated form that is not connected to everything in the universe. But that isn't actually true. And getting over that delusion is part of the reason for Buddhist practice, for meditation, for doing all of the many methods and techniques that Buddhism teaches, that the Buddha taught, which is called the Dharma. So it isn't like, it doesn't just mean not being selfish. It means overcoming an illusion about the nature of ontology, the nature of our reality.
Yes, it reminds me again of Platonism, which was, I think there's a great modern philosopher guy. I hope he's still around. Pierre Grimes. He's American, but I don't know if you know of him, but he gives lectures about how Platonism and Plato is the Western esotericism, is the Western mysticism that is compatible with obviously the end story of the Republic is the story of reincarnation. And
right. Well, I mean, and Plato too is going back to Empedocles and other pre-Socratic philosophers who really were a priesthood, a mystical tradition. I think academia presents Plato as merely a philosopher when clearly he was a religious teacher, but he was drawing on traditions even older than him. And of course, there are parallels between Buddhism and Platonism in the sense of the shadows in the cave is similar to the illusion of samsara that Buddhists are trying to. I mean, these are universal truths, different spiritual traditions. I think Gnosticism, the Platonic tradition, Buddhism, some aspects of Tantric Hinduism, even of Sufism, look at the same phenomenon. We are living in an illusory world, and we need to free ourselves from the illusion that we are in. The Platonic ideals are the true nature of reality that we are obscured from.
Well, personally, I tend to think of it as I'm not sure as humans we can ever understand either the gods or the forces or even the laws of it all. Maybe, as you say, if any of this is true, and at some higher levels, maybe we gain understanding. But it seems like even the names we give to gods and things, it's all sort of anthropomorphic and suited to what we need in the low level way that we can ever possibly understand any of it, whatever the nature of the divine mystery and this great machine that's been set in motion and why. I mean, I don't know. I just think we can only guess at how it really works. And even those sacred mystery religions, like Pierre Grimes would say that Platonism is the Western version of Buddhism and those, and that they're linked originally, and that was, he would agree, I think, that Abrahamism is the split that kind of, even though they adopted a lot of Platonism into Christianity, that
Right.
and then they had Aristotle in Islam, and I don't know what the Jews have. Maybe they have.
No,
What do they?
Platonic and Aristotelian thinking definitely affected the Abrahamic religions, but yeah, I think that they are a dead end, and I think they are not wisdom religions.
Wisdom religion, yeah, exactly. And they definitely teach a whole kind of a simplified version of things that is led to the modern world, and that when it leads to atheism in a way, because it's so, you have to be in a simple kind of tribal state to believe the simplistic nature of the story. It doesn't have, you know what I mean? It's very like the Christian story on its face, when you're able, when it was translated from Latin, I think that was the first step towards the atheist, materialist, capitalist world of the West today. Is that because we lost more.
I mean, definitely the Protestant form of Christianity and Methodism definitely helped to create the horrible nature of capitalism that we have. I would say capitalism is in a strange way part of the Christian tradition.
Well, I think we've been, ever since the fall of we have only materialist choices. There was communism or capitalism, and there are the supposedly the left and right that we have to choose from, but they're not really. Both of them are just shite and absolutely outside the real thing, which would be, as you and I would agree, monarchy, at least a naked hierarchy, I think, because the Egyptians and the Romans and all of these ancient statecraft practitioners, you had your king or even your emperor if he needs to be, and then down through the lines you had your artisans and your knights and your warriors and your priests, and you kept them in a hierarchy. Artisans were higher than merchants, I should add, which now we have merchants at the top. Mercantile values are the number one value with the American way, and they were aware of the danger of that materialism, that it would destroy everything. And you just to be openly, because everything ends in that hierarchy anyways. If you go for communism and then the communists kill everybody, you still wind up, Stalin becomes the pharaoh, basically, right? And in fact, he had more powers than any fucking emperor ever had.
Right. No, a real problem. I mean, one of the things we talked about before this interview is why is the world falling apart? Is that people are still dependent on these totally antiquated ideologies that have never worked. And even the whole left-right opposition, I think, is absurd. I don't even think there really is a left or a right anymore.
It's just the French Revolution thing.
Well, actually, yes, and I think probably a lot of your viewers know that left and right only have a meaning because of monarchy falling apart. The idea of a left wing was the people who were against the king. They sat on the left side of the king's throne, and then the Republicans, totally different kind of Republican, people who believe, they were on the left, and then the people who were the royalists were on the right, and that is where this whole ridiculous, incredibly simplistic and reductive thing of reducing everything to left and right comes from.
Yeah, and it's it's false, because the average person cannot conceive of the things we're talking about. I talk about it all the time, but it doesn't seem to get anywhere. It's like,
well, are we agreeing then that monarchy is, and the pharaoh or the Caesar, it's a natural hierarchy? It seems to be part of the human experience, and that seemed to work for thousands of years. It's
like a functioning army, a functioning business. You have to have that structure of the leader down to the bottom. And I do think the natural caste system, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not as harsh as it sounds. The one that's
the problem is it exists whether you like it or not.
Yeah, exactly.
We are not equal. I am not you. You are not me. We have our strengths and our weaknesses. Nobody is this idea of enforced egalitarianism is what creates a lot of the discontent and despair, because we are not equal. Everybody cannot be beautiful. Everyone cannot be talented. Everyone is not gifted, Well,
most people are usually gifted in one way or another, but it may not be, it's totally disparate, and they will not, be all good at everything. So
Right.
You know, just because you're, say, born into a lower caste doesn't mean you can't excel at this and that. Like even say in ancient Egypt, if you were born into a, you know, totally low caste stonecutter or something like that, they had a policy when you were in school that if you excelled at math or something totally exceptional and useful, they'd take you out and throw you into the prince's school alongside all the royalty right there.
Right.
That was their system.
No,
You know?
there are those rare individuals that can transcend their environment and what they were born into, of course.
Well,
And
just
that's
that
part of
in the traditional society, there was social mobility, because it makes it sound
Right.
like it's rigid and it's totally, but it wasn't like that necessarily. If you did have those skills, if you happened to be born with something and you
right.
exhibited it, you would have social mobility.
Well, that's why I am a traditionalist, and unfortunately, secular humanist liberal progressivism tends to dismiss everything old as if all of it is totally useless, antiquated,
Yeah.
cruel superstition that is of no value, and that only what is new or what is coming next will be good. And I think that is a very Kali Yugic energy.
It is. And they're all emotional and stuff. But usually, this is why I actually have some videos on this. I don't know what you think about this, but usually they start crying about slavery, right? So I made a video with a German friend of mine, actually, about apologetics for slavery, in the sense of not only is it basically still around today, and you have like wage slavery is slavery in a sense.
Oh, come on. Are people who working a 9-to-5 job that they hate so that they can live, not slaves? They absolutely are.
Yeah, someone in an Amazon warehouse making, God knows what for, as though it's not, it's just sort of you renaming it, and
Right.
and like even the concept of how did we? I'm trying to think even now. How did we defend it? But just that it was a traditional, organically occurring. I mean, it sounds so harsh.
Well,
It sounds funny.
If a Martian were to look at human history, slavery has always been the norm until very recently. And as you say, it's still continuing, except we've changed the phrases. We've created euphemisms to make wage slavery seem like it isn't still slavery.
Yeah. It's just basically the lowest rung of the caste ladder, often for defeated tribes, or I guess people so incapable. I'm not sure how it worked, or how you wound up a slave. I know it was in Greece. You defeated the neighboring city-state and you enslaved them, and that was it.
Right.
And certainly it's a bit harsh, but they did have laws for slave protection and stuff like that. And if you were the slave of a wealthy man in Rome, you're much better off than a free man who was poor. Let's say it wasn't like totally black and white.
Well, these are taboo ideas to even talk about. The phrase colonialism. Every single culture has practiced what we're calling colonialism. Not only white people. Genghis Khan was kind of a colonialist.
He was one of the great colonialists.
Yeah, but somehow it's only white people who are colonizing, or only white people that are racist. So yeah, I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent, but the problem is nobody knows anything about history. Nobody even cares about history. If we look at history objectively, obviously slavery was a part of, all of the wonders of the ancient world were created by slaves. Whether you like that or don't like it, it's a fact.
Yeah, well, I think you're right in that, we're all living under the values of the American Empire, and they've kind of really and truly created this, I don't know how to describe it, like an illusion of total value equality, but it's just like a changing of terms, and like a little, it's like a little smoke and mirrors trick in many ways. Here, someone has a question actually I'm curious about too. Mr. Monty Fontaine says, what does Nikolas think of Northern European paganism?
Well, as I said, when I came into this world, the two things that totally attracted me were the Greek gods and the Northern gods, and the werewolf order, which existed from 1988 until the mid 90s, was dedicated to Northern mythology. So that's been a very important part of my religious practice for a very long time. The problem with it, I do believe that I have connected to Woden and Loki, and the Fenris wolf is still my spirit animal, Fenrir, the wolf
Really?
that destroys the sun in Ragnarok.
I didn't. Okay.
Yeah, I'm very, very conversant in the Northern religion. The problem with it is we don't really know what the practices were, because almost everything that we know about it comes from the point of view of Snorri Snorrenson, this Icelandic monk.
Christian. He was
So,
Christian, wasn't he? Yeah.
yeah, so
Monk.
we have a, of course there are other sources, and there are remnants of Teutonic folklore that we can interpret, but unlike other living traditions, we do not know the esoteric wisdom. We have to do a lot of guesswork. And I think a problem with what we're calling paganism is there's way too much filling in the gap of wishful thinking of what we would like Northern mythology to be. And it sort of becomes like Wicca, a fake reconstruction of something that I think my problem with it is we cannot be absolutely sure how the Northern religion focused. We know a lot of it, and we can connect directly to those gods, to the Aesir and the Vanir, but we don't, it's a dead tradition. It is, we don't have a living master that continued to teach that lineage. That's the problem with it.
So is that why you turned east to Buddhism? Because it's more fully preserved and fleshed out?
I don't think of it as turning east. I mean, I still am very much a Eurocentric and a Westerner. I think Tantric Buddhism is, as far as I'm concerned, the truth. It is a reality. It's as true for someone in the West as it is for the East. It's not, I don't really see it as a particularly, a question of Occident versus Orient. I just see it after all of my spiritual journey, I believe that it is the most effective method to ascertain what reality is and to obtain liberation from samsara, from the realm of perpetual, endless suffering.
And back to the world soul. I remember my Hindu friend, when I talked to him, he was like, there's a world soul where all the souls go. Is that the same in Buddhism? Like a giant soul?
Not really.
All the souls are part of a giant soul?
This is confusing, but one of the major differences between Hinduism and the Dharma is that we do not believe in a soul, which in Hinduism is called Atman. We do not believe that there is that what reincarnates is not the same thing over and over again. Basically, Hinduism accepts that there is a you, an Atman, that continues to reincarnate and keeps learning. And this has sort of informed New Age thinking, that we keep learning something here and we improve and get better. That's not necessarily true. Buddhism accepts that the mind stream that you have continues to reincarnate, but it transforms, it changes every time. We bring our habits and our karma and our memories into our next life. But the metaphor that is used, if you take a candle and you put a match from one candle and then moved it to the other candle, is it the same flame? So it's a subtle differentiation, but an important one. So we don't really believe that there is a permanent soul. We believe that it transforms and that everything is impermanent.
Well, that sounds logical to me. If there's one thing I believe, it's that everything, the strange nature of change, is intrinsic to this bizarre machine, whatever it is. That absolutely everything is subject to change, as far as I can see, and that's the nature of allowing it to be eternal.
Well, that was the Buddha's his first teaching after he became enlightened under the Bodhi tree, and he taught.
This is a conclusion I reached on my own. You
reached it on your own because you are an initiate, because you have a sincere desire to discover the truth, and that has to. And if you follow that motivation, I believe you will come to these universally true conclusions. That this is one of the Buddha's main teachings. That first of all, that everything is impermanent, and that the cause of our suffering is because we would like everything to be permanent. We would like to be able to grasp and hold on to everything, but it's fading away, and so are we fading away. We are impermanent. The experiences we have are as misty as last night's dream, and we're trying to hang on to this impermanent thing. So that was a key to his teaching.
Yeah, I absolutely am sure of that. I
Right.
must look more into the Buddhism, because I don't know. Again, just like Gnosticism and other things, I'm not sure what sources to actually go for to know I'm
Well,
reading what they really teach. Or how
I,
did you?
for Gnosticism, you should look up the Nag Hammadi texts, which are, as much as the internet is an abyss of stupidity and ignorance, it also does have great archives of wisdom. So all of the Nag Hammadi texts are available online. You should look at those.
Okay, I read some summary of them. I remember the stories about how Jesus had these stories of like zapping people, and I remember Terrence McKenna had stories from the Nag Hammadi libraries of there's accounts of Jesus like he has a race with some other kid when he's young, and then when he doesn't win, he like zaps him and he falls.
Well, yeah,
This kind of
the
thing.
Jesus of the Gnostic texts is much more of a magician and wonder worker or thaumaturge than the Roman Catholic Church presentation.
And let me just ask. I meant to ask this earlier. Let me just ask what's on my mind. What is the source of the Gnostic version of the text? What is that?
What is the source of it?
It's just the Nag Hammadi. It's just we found it in a scroll, basically. Like,
well, bits of Gnostic wisdom have infiltrated a lot of the esoteric tradition of the world, but the Roman Catholic Church persecuted the so-called Gnostics, actually killed them, misreported it, smeared them, and they were heretics. So up into the 12th century, the Albigensians, the Cathars were living traditions of Gnosticism that were wiped out and persecuted. But the Nag Hammadi texts were discovered after the war in the late 40s in a cave, and it has revolutionized our understanding of Christianity and of religion.
Well, most Christians don't.
Beginning, even though it was in, I think, 1947 that it was discovered, scholars are still only really coming to terms with the complete revolution of our understanding of the Christian religion based on that.
Yeah. So, and there was a great there was a woman online on YouTube that used to be great for this. Murdoch was her name. Do you know who I mean? She died of cancer 2010 or something.
I mean, I am pretty antiquated in that I try to gain my knowledge from firsthand, Gnostic experience, but also scholarly works, not occult works, and not, there's a lot of influencers on YouTube who present a glib, easy to understand version of various.
Oh no, she was a religious scholar of some kind. I don't remember. She was definitely like an actual well-read scholar.
Another female Gnostic scholar that is worth looking at is Elaine Pagels, Pagels. Okay. I would recommend her work. As far as
I don't know that Murdoch was a Gnostic. I don't remember what she was, but she was just explaining the how the original texts, if you go and look at them, it's nothing like what we are presented in the Schofield Bible kind of thing, where in its origin, there's like Jesus was related to Dionysus, and there was all this vast history of interlinked craziness that dilutes it.
Right. One of my earliest Gnostic teachers, who I mentioned before, Dr. Stefan Heller of the Ecclesia Gnostica, I saw a lecture that he gave in Los Angeles where he was saying the timing of the discovery of the Nag Hammadi text right after the discovery of the atom bomb and the catastrophe of World War II almost seemed like divine providence, that this true and authentic mystical tradition that we didn't even know much about was suddenly revealed to us at that time, and that he believes as catastrophes continue to get worse in our ever crumbling and chaotic world, that there will be other discoveries. And I think, not to be completely pessimistic in our discussion of the dark ages that we are currently in, that should encourage us to realize that what you said, everything is impermanent. Our civilization is crumbling. It is falling apart drastically, quickly, dangerously. The very fabric of civilization is falling apart so rapidly that tomorrow it's going to be worse than it was yesterday. And the only thing we can do that makes any sense is attend to our inner world, to our initiation, to our spiritual development. That's the only thing that we can count on, is perfecting our own consciousness, trying to understand ourselves, trying to understand what reality is. We cannot get lost in ideology or hanging on to political solutions or personality cults or thinking that somebody outside of us is going to save us or some social change or revolution is going to make it better. We have to work on ourselves, and that is the path of initiation. So if I have any parting message to give to people, and I know people accuse me of being too serious, but it is serious what's going on. We are faced with a worldwide catastrophe, and we need to perfect our inner world and stop worrying about the outer world, because it's like being in a burning house. You can't redecorate it.
Yes, and I agree. And yes, those are excellent parting words. I'll let you go now in a minute, actually, because I kept you for an hour and a half. But there's a question here I do want to ask you. Someone asked, Mr. Monty Fontaine
No,
again says,
feel free if you have other questions. I just thought that was an important point.
no, it is a very good point. I mean, for my part, I'm working on myself. I don't know. I gave up. How do I learned everything I know basically through the internet and messing around on the internet for all its negative points.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you that there's the echo chambers and everything else, but you can find your way to, if you're discriminating and obviously, but the algorithms and all, and that really try to direct you into everything nowadays more than
Well,
ever.
I'm being a hypocrite. Here I am trying to reach people through the internet. So, obviously there's a tantric saying, to take out a thorn, you have to use a thorn, or that the antidote to poison is poison. So we must use the mediums of our current day to reach people, because this is how else are we going to do it?
Yeah, so I just think through that, well, no, the most formative thing that happened to me was I read the classics. I read Caesar, Plato, the Annals of Caesar, Plato. Plotinus was extremely had an extreme effect on me.
Mm-hmm.
Plutarch, Cicero. At one point in my, I would like more, like tons of them. I read so many of them, and just their whole framework, their inquisitive, natural kind of observation of the world, and how everything they said was both philosophical, rational, and spiritual.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like, this worldview is utterly superior.
Well, I should point out, rationality and critical thinking are necessary parts of the mystical experience. They are spiritual powers. It isn't that one should completely surrender to irrationalism. Logic is a spiritual power. The ability to discriminate what is true and not true, to research things, to determine what reality is and what it isn't. And that's but that used to be a classical education, what you're describing. Most educated people would have been exposed to the classical literature, and now they aren't. And I think and that's why I'm a traditionalist. I think we need to return to the roots of the ancient world and this lost wisdom that you're talking about. And I would add to that list of names that one should study Iamblichus on theurgy. Is very important as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, absolute genius. I never actually read the Proclus. Apparently he's very good too.
Yeah.
I haven't read.
Yeah, but I mean, I would recommend everybody out there a curriculum of the classics of Western, the very basis of Western philosophy is absolutely necessary. And the epics, the Iliad, the Odyssey, these are things that Western culture, that is the foundation. And if we lose that, then we're just a swamp of pop culture, completely superficial and shallow.
Yeah, and it's worse than ever. Worse than ever. So, sorry, the question I was going to read is, that's where he says, Mr. Monty Fontaine, do you believe that some people actually have memories of past lives? Why do some people have them and others don't?
Well, I can only speak from my own experience. I have always known that rebirth and reincarnation are true because I immediately had memories of past lives. I believe that the reason some people do and some people don't is the more spiritual practice one has done and meditation in our past lives, the clearer our mind is of the kleshas or obscurations that prevent us from seeing the full totality of our being. But like I said, I immediately felt drawn to ancient Greece. I knew as soon as I came into this world, that is what was familiar to me. I recognized everything about ancient Greece and about the northern mythology and religion. I have had very clear past life glimpses, not that I could say who I was, but I know what I looked like at one certain point.
Really?
I had an experience in Tulum, Mexico, as a prepubescent, where I
On
knew
mescaline?
that I knew that I was a Mayan.
Sorry. Right, go on.
That I knew that I was a Mayan priest looking out at this body of water that has been renamed recently.
Oh, right.
And
Right.
but I knew I was looking through the mind of this Mayan priest that I used to be. I saw myself in Germany in the 1920s. I had a vision of that was very clear, and I've had other little glimpses of that confirm that. And it isn't anything special. It is, it isn't really anything extraordinary. We will have memories. The more spiritual practice we do, it's like we have blinders. We only see this little life, but as we practice, we have a wider vista of how ancient we are, of how many beings we have been. So I think the reason that some people have that experience more than others is the more recently you have had spiritual experiences and done meditation, the more clear one's mind is. But one shouldn't get hung up on it. One shouldn't become fascinated with who you were, because we have to deal with who we are now. We have to deal with total urgency, immediacy, and awareness with what we're doing right now. It can help us to understand why we have the life we have now. But a lot of new age people and occultists get totally caught up on, I was the reincarnation of so-and-so. Ultimately, we've been everything. We've been everyone. So it evens out. We have to deal with who we are right now.
I find it very difficult to believe people who say things like that with absolute certainty sometimes. And like someone who says, "Oh, I was specifically so and so," I'll be much more inclined to believe like what you say, where you just had a sort of vision of like.
Yeah, I mean,
it's inexplicable.
Very impressive. And despite all my years of meditation and practice, I've had about 4 very solid glimpses where I could say I seem to have been a Mayan priest, a German in the 1920s here in Berlin, and a few other something to do with ancient Greece. I've had very vivid memories of that, but I don't know who I was. I'm not saying I was anything important. I wasn't Cleopatra or John Dee. This kind of thing is immediate.
Yeah.
That
would be amazing. Well, maybe
right.
you were. I mean, although if you are, you're somewhat famous in this life, so that would suggest that you.
I think
we're less famous in the previous life. You don't go from like being at the top to. Isn't that how it works in the reincarnation?
No,
cycle?
I think that my natural arrogance and tendency to elitism and everything is definitely inherited. I think I have. Yeah, I expect VIP treatment since I was come into this world. So, and I know it's obnoxious. I see it as, yeah.
I don't think you're obnoxious. I don't see anything obnoxious about you. But you're.
But I do have an imperious. I have an imperious and superior attitude that I think probably.
You're not superior. You wouldn't say that. People that have a true superior, superior attitude are like idiots that like are rude to waiters and stuff. Like
No. I'm not rude, but I think there is something to that. I don't think you go from being a turtle to a king. I think there's a
true noble person is not in a cheap and cheesy, superficial way. Yeah,
right.
Maybe
I think that my belief in monarchy and my feeling of connection to aristocratic ideals comes from being, in a courtly environment. I think that is connected to the initiatory path. There's something royal about the protection of initiatory wisdom.
Did you ever see Crowley's political ideas?
Well, as a young man, I read all of Crowley, but I'm totally uninterested in him, I have
Oh,
to
I
say.
am too. Everything about him except his political suggestions, which were kind of cool. Something to do with like 7 kings and like a guild system. It was actually
Yeah,
very original and cool.
yeah, they're not totally impractical. I did a lot of research into Jack Parsons in the 90s. I interviewed a lot of people who knew Cameron and Parsons, people who were still survived, who knew them very well. And he really took Crowley's political ideas seriously. And apparently what we've discovered from the people around him, he believed this prophecy in the Book of the Law that there would be a Ptolemaic nation, and some of Crowley's commentaries on that. And so he was actually trying to sell rocket secrets to either China or Israel. He wasn't sure which one would be the Ptolemaic nation.
Oh my God. Where, yeah, that's funny. Oh, here,
But yeah,
one more.
it surprises a lot of people. But you know, Crowley is the poster boy of magic, and to me, I read his diaries, and I think this is not someone you'd want to make a role model. He just seems like a narcissist, a junkie who
Yeah.
couldn't even control. I mean, how are you talking about the will when you don't even have the willpower to end your heroin addiction? You know, that's not
Yeah,
a
he was
very
just debauched, but he did have some clever ideas as well. You know, it's often the two sides of every person, I guess, right?
No, I mean he wrote so prolifically that like a monkey with a typewriter, there's definitely useful stuff in it, but I wouldn't recommend anybody study Crowley personally. Although again, I know people who are Thelemites, who are Crowleyans, who I respect and admire, but for me personally, he was never of any value to me.
Okay, I have two more, definitely two more questions. What's your view on Hermeticism?
I have to admit that I have studied it, but it has never really appealed to me personally. It isn't that I reject it, but that I've always felt more connection. I still feel it's too eclectic, and it's almost like has some of the same problems of Western occultism, and that it just seems like too many streams together to have. I don't really think it's a firm direction that leads you anywhere. So I'm much more attracted to more coherent systems like Buddhism and Gnosticism. It's not that I reject it. It's strangely, I don't have an affinity for it.
Right. Well, you have to go with what resonates. This is what I think as well. Like most of
Right.
any.
I mean, I know about it in a scholarly way. I've certainly read the major texts of Hermeticism, but it never really grabbed me. That's, you know, but unlike Colonianity or Christianity, I don't reject it. I think there's wisdom in it, and I think there's a certain connection to the Gnostic stream in it, and there is absolute and perennial wisdom in it, but it has never been my practice.
Yeah, it is. It's very strange. Yeah. And their obsession with the lead into gold thing, and the fact that they could do that now in nuclear reactors, which is pretty funny, but it's too expensive to.
So you had one more question. Make it good. Make it important.
Okay. Well, I can't say no. Oh, for me, it's not my question. Someone else. I can't say how good it is.
Okay.
But it's kind of interesting, and then it is relevant. So, Frank Sunasan says, "Did he talk about his experience with Set yet?" And then he asks again, the Egyptian god Set. So he really wants to know what your experience with Set was.
Well, as I said, Set is the deity that is most important to me, and he's part of the whole Egyptian pantheon. So to be a practicing Setian, you have to understand the other Neteru and his place in the cosmology of ancient Chem. But I do prayers to Set every day, every morning and every night. I connect with him. I feel that he is my spiritual guide. He protects me. I am absolutely convinced, that I'm in communication with him and have been in deepening levels of understanding. I contacted him at first in London when I was involved with the Typhonian OTO, which was a misadventure that really didn't lead anywhere, but looking deeper into finding out what Set is, as opposed to what Kenneth Grant said he was, which wasn't accurate. And then I went to Egypt to search for what Set was. I believe that I had a genuine religious experience contacting Set, or he contacted me. and he informs every aspect of my life. So, it's so much a part of my life that it would be difficult for me to describe how important it is.
Okay, well, that is fascinating, and that is the last question.
All right, I wanted.
Oh wait, one more question. One more question. What is the best way to? Last one, absolutely last one.
All right.
What is the best way
One
to
and a
deal?
half. One and a
Okay, this
half.
is a doozy. It's a doozy.
Okay.
What is the best way to deal with past trauma?
What way to deal with what kind of trauma?
Past trauma. I don't know if he means past life
Well,
trauma
or whatever trauma that happened to you is in the past.
what is the best way to deal with past trauma? Any trauma, probably. Yeah, in your current life, let's say.
Yeah. First of all, I would say that the whole concept of trauma is a modern Western psychological viewpoint that I don't think is very useful. I mean, I think if you look at from the Buddhist perspective or the Gnostic perspective, this realm is a realm of suffering. Do not expect this world to be comforting or that everything will turn out the way you want it to be. I think trauma is a very modern concept that's based on this sort of modern consumer idea that everything's going to turn out the way we want it to be, So I think from a philosophical perspective, I kind of reject the modern idea of identifying yourself as a traumatized being. I mean, you've had painful experiences. I've had painful experiences that we would rather not have, but I take a warrior approach to it. I expect life to be difficult, and I expect there to be challenges. And I think actually General JFC Fuller, described the modern world as economic man and the ancient world as heroic man. And I think the ancients didn't have a concept of trauma. To be heroic is to accept that there's going to be adversity. And to be a warrior is to accept that we will defeat inner adversity and outer adversity. And so I'm not very sympathetic to the idea of defining ourselves by our negative experiences and our trauma.
Well, that is excellent, and that is a truly excellent answer to completely turn it around like that. Yes, it reminds me of it reminds me again of reading the classics and reading the account of Alcibiades and his life and how all the negative things that ever happened to him, he just completely turned it around and was like, "Fuck you." Even when the Greeks, his home country turned on him, anybody turned on him, he was like, "Okay, right. Fuck you, I'm leaving."
Well, I've had all kinds of adversity and dealt with violence and threat and drama that most people couldn't even deal with. And I don't feel that I'm traumatized by it. I am strengthened by it. And a more modern philosopher, now one that I don't completely ascribe to all of his ideas either, Nietzsche's idea of amor fati, of accepting your fate, accept it, love it. And this is something that Manson taught me as well in his very miserable condition in prison. He really taught me, accept what is happening, deal with it, make it work for you. What Nietzsche called amor fati, Charlie said, he was a card player. He said, you're dealt a certain amount of cards. Play them well, play them cleverly, but they're your cards. Don't lose, play the game right. Whatever cards you're given, make them work for you. And so I think amor fati, accepting your fate, is the heroic warrior and initiatory way to approach the inevitable adversities that will occur in life.
And was Charlie's way of accepting his fate doing what it took to become a legendary sort of mythological figure in his way?
I don't think he set out to be. That's a complicated story. And that brings me to my last point. I didn't talk about him much, but if people are interested, the Manson file is available from Rough Trade and Cargo in Great Britain. So if anyone wants to know what my spiritual understanding of Charlie is and of the whole phenomenon, what the crimes are really about, those that are interested in what I had to say about Satan and the true nature of him, the Satanic Screen from Head Press Books has a long introduction that explains my current understanding of the devil. and all three of some of my major books were republished last year. And this is from Manis Sinistra in Peru, Flowers from Hell, a Satanic Reader, which is an anthology and kind of explains how the satanic archetype was formed mostly from literature, not really from the biblical tradition, but from fiction and great works of literature. So if you're interested in some of what I've had to say, you'll find more comprehensive and exhaustive elucidation of it there.
Excellent. Excellent. Ever the showman. A perfect conclusion. More perfect than
Okay.
I've ever had from any guest, and like shilling in a nice gentlemanly way.
Well, thank you.
I mean, excellent. Well done. And
All
like
right.
I used to say, for everybody that gave me hassle was like, oh, the Satanist, and like bitching about it. I was like, who have you, like, once again, and what does he prove to be but another brother in traditional classical values?
Oh yeah,
And
that I mean, yeah, I mean, you have to understand, my satanic period was relatively brief. I've been a tantric Buddhist for most of the 21st century, so that's that's it. I've called this the Ziggy Stardust syndrome. Whatever you are first perceived as, you remain that forever. No matter how much you change, no matter what you do, people are going to remember their first impression. And I don't mind that. I don't, unlike most people, I own what I used to be. I don't totally reject it. That was me then. That was like my younger brother. But, that was a part of me. And I think it was a significant initiatory lesson that makes me a better spiritual teacher for understanding what evil is, for understanding darkness. But, I haven't been that for a very long time. And I'm actually a vociferous opponent of it.
yes, and you definitely explained that very thoroughly. And final comment someone makes is very interesting guest, Brendan. Thank you. Yes, it is very interesting. And we didn't even as far as if you want to research this man's life. I mean, we're just talking about his belief system here, but the people he's known and the things he's done is really very, like, I'm still even after this, I will continue looking up you in other YouTube videos, and all the every single one is something new. It's like, oh my god, he shared a recording studio with Guns N' Roses, or this all this crazy stuff.
Actually, I just gave an interview about that that we just went on the air today. It's on a podcast called it's by a guy named Jason Hay, and it's about Charlie's musical journey. And if you look on my Facebook page, I did give an interview where I mentioned how Radio Werewolf used to rehearse with Guns N' Roses, and how I believe that's how they even started thinking about doing their ridiculous cover version of the song.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Yeah, so you had that direct influence, because I remember that when that came out. When I remember being scandalized, like, oh, they're doing a Charlie Manson song. Oh,
right.
I mean, I remember that. Yeah.
I'm kind of glad we stuck more to abstract and philosophical issues but we can speak again about the misadventures of my biography. And I am writing a memoir slowly but surely in different books about different phases of my life. But yeah, we can speak again about such matters.
Oh, I'd love to. I absolutely would love to. Just so everybody knows, like, we didn't even touch the iceberg of Nikolas Schreck. We only just surface level. But I mean, actually, we went in a way. We went right down to the bottom level. But there's all this other stuff.
Philosophical, mystical level is the important level. As I said, as the world's falling apart, you better work on your inner initiation, because the outer world is nothing to hang on to. So,
and it's too bad we screwed up the first video. And I'm sorry about that. And everyone's got to find this one, so we don't. That's if you want the real
Again, amor fati, we have to accept that was the nature of this experience. There was an obstacle, we overcame it, and we succeeded in doing what we set out to do. So that's the way to operate. So pleasure to meet you. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, and thanks for coming on. Thanks very much. And everyone go out and get his books.
Happy Valentine's Day to everyone.
I'm going to go inside to the wife right now and make up to her.
Yeah, I did want to point out that love is the most important thing. And as much as people tend to trivialize Valentine's Day and, justifiably attack it as a commercial thing. I think Valentine's Day is important. Anything that reminds us to celebrate love is crucial to the initiatory path. So happy Valentine's Day to you and to everyone out there.
Okay, thank you. And same to you. Same to all of you. And
Many blessings. Thank you.
goodbye. Oh, I screwed it up. Hold on. There we go.